a patron messaged me and said, "What do you do for your basic brush care?" And I started to, type out a really long reply, and I'm like, "Bias, you dummy. Do a vlog on it." So I'm answering that question by doing this vlog. So if you don't have any questions about brush care, then you may not pick up much from this vlog. This is what I do, and I'm not going to be one to say my method is the right method. I've watched what a lot of people do. I've done what a lot of people do. I've seen what worked. I've seen what didn't work as well. And I won't say something didn't work as well because somebody was wrong. I don't just, sometimes I don't have a good understanding of how somebody did it, or the conditions may be a little different. But what I've arrived at is, I guess you'd say, it's certainly not my own method. It's lots of other people's methods, trimmed here and shaped there, and kind of synthesized down to the way I like to do things, because I like shortcuts. I always feel like I'm in a hurry, so I like shortcuts. So just some general things. Now, I've talked a lot about the kinds of brushes I get, so let me hit on that real quick. Let me just grab a few off of my shelf here. I should have had this one already out. I apologize. Now, basically, I work with 3 different kinds of brushes: very cheap synthetics, nicer synthetics, and then sable brushes. Now, I think this was 16 cents. I got a whole pack of 50 of them for, I don't know, $14 or something like that. I use these a lot. Now, early on when you first use them, they have a good point. And you can use them for a lot of things, many of the same things you do these two for. But with these, I'm not as worried about cleaning them, because I know that pretty quickly they're going to start looking pretty rough. And, their life is going to be measured in maybe weeks. So when it comes to cleaning those, I use water. I use some of the things I'm going to show you today. But my primary cleaner for those is, when I get done with the session, I just use some automotive lacquer thinner. I know I'm going to be throwing them away real soon. This cleans them of everything. Yeah, it shortens their life, but the way I use them for everything from applying texture stuff to painting to just whatever, applying washes and enamels and oils and everything else, they get beat up. So I'm not worried about using a really corrosive cleaner, because all I want them to do is get clean, and then I wash them off in water, and then I damp the water off, and I go on to the next thing. And if this one is probably just a few days from hitting the trash can, and what I'll do then is grab out my jar of cheap brushes, and I'll grab one out of there and keep going. I've got 100 brushes in that jar. So when it comes to the cheap ones, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about cleaning. I just want the paint off of them. Cleaning them for long life is not even really something I think about. So this is just quick, down and dirty, and expedient. Now, for my nicer synthetic brushes, this is a brand that I've just started trying out. It's from Blick Art, and it's their house brand, Master Stroke Golden Taklon. Now, Golden Taklon is made from robot sables. They're sables that are actually robots with artificial hair on them, and they chase them out. Okay, I made that up, but it's synthetic, and they call it Golden Taklon. These are really nice. They're as good as any of the other synthetic brushes that I mentioned in a vlog a while back, talking about Da Vinci and Rosemary & Co. and ones like that. They hold their tip really good. They work really well. They're as close, with those other brands, they're as close to sable as you're going to get, and still have it be a synthetic. Now, what I tend to do with these when I'm cleaning, one, while I'm working, when I'm painting with acrylics, is I will occasionally clean the brush off. I don't let the paint dry on there. So every 5 minutes or so, if that long, I'm getting it into my cleaner and cleaning it off and drying it off, and then going back into the paint. I don't just keep painting and keep painting and keep painting, because that acrylic paint is drying over time, and it's going to eventually clog up the brush. Another thing I do is I don't let the paint get more than about 3/4 of the way up the bristles if I can help it. I don't want it getting up in here to the the metal part. And that way it won't spread out the bristles, because once it gets up in there and it starts drying, it's like if your fingers are together like this, if you start having something that goes in between them like that, well, you can't get them back together. And so it starts changing the shape of the brush. Another thing I do, this isn't cleaning, but I try to rarely use the actual point. I try to use just the edge of the point so that I'm not pushing down on the brush and splaying it out, but I'm using the side that way, and that'll help it. Now, for that kind of intermediate cleaning while I'm working with it, I actually use, assuming I'm using acrylic paints, which is pretty much all I do for brush, I use some Vallejo airbrush thinner to clean it off. That gets the paint out better than just water. Also, when I am using water, I keep my water warm like I do for decals. I keep it over here on the coffee warmer. Warm water is going to help clean it out better. Now, I do have some of this Masters cleaner and preserver, and I will clean the brushes at the end of the day, sometimes using this. You just get it wet and you swirl it around in there and you work it off on paper towel and you rinse it off in warm water, and it'll clean it up. But I've actually started just going into the kitchen when I'm at the end of the session and running the hot water just lightly, and cleaning off the brush under the hot water, hot enough that it's not so hot that I can't put my finger under it, and just using some dish soap to clean it off. And that seems to get it much cleaner. And then I'll just wet a little bit of this down and put it on it to just kind of shape the brush to put it away. And then when I want to put it away, I have these little paper clothes hangers here. And what I'll do is I'll clip them on my shelf like that, so that they're clipped right here like that, but of course not as big as that. And then I'll stick them in here like this and let them hang down like that overnight, so that they're drying off while pointing down. Now I could put this on and put it in my jar, but there's not as much air circulation. So by having this just sitting out like that, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to dry off much better and give me a much better result when I clean it off. I do not use my automotive lacquer thinner to clean these. That's going to be too destructive, because these, by caring for them this way, they're going to last a lot longer. Now, for the sable brushes, I use them, I clean them basically the same way. I clean off during the painting process, so there's not as much drying on them. They tend to, my experience is they tend to clean up easier than these. These are going to seem to have more ability to get gunked up, the synthetic ones, than the natural. But the natural ones I'm much more gentle with in terms of making sure I don't mess up the tip and things like that. Because I think this was $3 or $4. This is like $14, $12. So I'm much more willing to be a little more adventuresome with this one than this one. But the cleaning there is, again, I do intermediate cleaning, and then I'll clean it with either the Masters brush cleaner and preserver, or I'll use a little bit of soap and water and just clean that up a little bit, get it rinsed off really good, then use this just to do a final shaping of it and let it hang to dry. So that's kind of the way that I do that in brush care, and it works pretty good. I've come to the conclusion that, being able to brag that, well, I've had this brush for 3 years and it's still got the same tip on it. To me, it's kind of like, when you see a guitar player that's proudly pointing to the fact that the face of their guitar has no stains on it. I'm like, well, you ain't been playing it then. You haven't been playing it hard, So I realize brushes are going to be expendable, but I try to care for them to extend their life, but at the same time, just treating them like, okay, they're going to be used, they're going to be expendable, so get everything you can out of them, but they're not precious.